Major Elena Santos watched Earth's first alien visitors glide across the marble floors of the United Nations headquarters, their silvery robes flowing with an otherworldly grace. As Earth's newly appointed military liaison to the Vexteri, she'd spent weeks preparing for this diplomatic dinner. Yet something about their perfect movements made her skin crawl. "Mommy, they don't blink," whispered her daughter Alice, clutching Elena's hand. At 12, Alice had earned her place at this historic event through an essay contest. Now she stood in her best dress, her dark curls neatly arranged, watching the aliens with the same wary expression Elena felt on her own face. "They've engineered away the need," Elena murmured back, recalling the briefing materials. The Vexteri had spent millennia perfecting their biology, eliminating what they considered evolutionary flaws. Their ambassador, Tulare, had explained it with barely concealed pride during their first meeting. The dinner began with speeches about unity and progress. Elena kept one eye on the Vexteri delegation while picking at her organic, locally sourced salad. The aliens didn't eat, another inefficiency they'd eliminated. Instead, they watched the humans with an intensity that reminded Elena of scientists observing lab specimens. Everything changed when Alice reached for the bread basket. The first sneeze caught everyone by surprise. The second brought the room to a startled silence. By the third, Tulare was on his feet, his perfect features contorted in what could only be described as disgust. "What is this malfunction?" he demanded, silver eyes fixed on Alice as she fumbled for her allergy medication. Elena stepped between them. "Just a mild allergic reaction. Nothing to." Allergic reaction. Tulare's translator couldn't quite capture the horror in his tone. "Your offspring's immune system attacks harmless proteins. This is barbaric." "It's perfectly normal," Elena said firmly, noting how other Vexteri were backing away from nearby humans. "Our immune systems adapt." "Adapt? Through failure? Through malfunction?" Tulare's voice rose with each question. "We were warned about your species' primitive state, but this is beyond comprehension. You allow genetic defects to persist, to propagate." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. UN security personnel shifted nervously as the Vexteri delegation began communicating in rapid clicks and whistles. "Ambassador," UN Secretary General Chen started. "Surely we can." "We studied your genetic archives," Tulare interrupted. "We assumed the flaws were historical records. But you," he gestured at Alice, who had finally gotten her sneezing under control, "you still carry these broken codes. Your species is a walking library of genetic abominations." Elena's diplomatic training warred with her maternal instincts as she watched the alien's silver eyes dilate. "Ambassador, I suggest we take a moment to. We cannot allow this to continue." Tulare raised his hand, revealing a silvery device. "The collective has protocols for genetic contamination. We thought to guide your evolution. Now we see that more direct measures are required." Everything happened at once. Elena's military training kicked in as she spotted the UN security teams reaching for their weapons. She grabbed Alice and Dove under the heavy oak table just as Tulare's device emitted a high-pitched whine. The explosion that followed wasn't one of fire or shrapnel, but of light and sound that seemed to rewrite reality itself. Through the chaos, Elena heard screams turn to wet coughs. She held Alice close, covering her daughter's mouth and nose with her dinner napkin, as an oily mist filled the air. "Hold your breath, baby," she whispered. "Hold your breath and run." They weren't the only ones running. Through the grand windows of the UN building, Elena could see similar lights erupting across New York's skyline. Her secure phone buzzed with multiple emergency alerts. The same scene was playing out in every major city where Vexteri delegates had been welcomed. They made it to Elena's diplomatic vehicle just as the first reports of mass casualties started coming in. As she sped through streets already filling with panicked civilians, Elena's military command channel crackled to life. "All units, this is not a drill. We are under global attack. I repeat, this is not a drill." Alice coughed in the back seat, and Alina's heart clenched. But the cough didn't worsen, didn't develop into the choking she'd seen others suffering. Something about her daughter's defective immune system was fighting back. As they crossed the George Washington Bridge, Alina glanced in her rearview mirror. The Manhattan skyline was disappearing under a rolling bank of oily fog, punctuated by flashes of silver light. Humanity's first contact had lasted less than a month. Their first war might not last much longer. But Alina had seen something in that dinner room, something that gave her hope. She'd seen fear in Tulari's eyes, fear of their imperfection, their adaptability, their chaos. And if the Vextari feared these things, maybe, just maybe, that meant humanity had strengths they didn't understand. "Where are we going?" Alice asked, her voice small but steady. "To warn everyone," Alina answered, pressing the accelerator as she headed west. "And then to show them exactly why they should have feared our imperfections." Dr. James Chen wiped the sweat from his brow as he studied the blood samples under his microscope. The makeshift lab in the ruins of Singapore's Science Center wasn't ideal, but it was all he had left after the Vextari's initial attack 3 months ago. Outside, the eternal tropical heat had turned the city into a steam bath, but that wasn't why he was sweating. "This can't be right," he muttered, switching to a different slide. Another anomaly. Dr. Sarah Wu asked from her workstation, where she was logging patient data. The young immunologist had been his student before the invasion. Now she was his only remaining colleague. Not an anomaly. A pattern. James switched slides again. "Remember that girl they brought in last week? The one they found in the Marina Bay bunker?" Sarah nodded. "Alice Santos, the American diplomat's daughter. Look at this." James waved her over. "Compare her blood sample from admission to today's." Sarah peered through the microscope, then jerked back in surprise. "That's impossible. The white cell count, the antibody structures, they're evolving." James pulled up more images on his salvage tablet. "And she's not the only one. I've found similar patterns in about 15% of our survivors." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm blared through the building. Red emergency lights flashed as Dr. Chen's security system detected incoming Vextari ships. "Get the samples secured," James ordered, already moving to shut down equipment. They'd learned the hard way that the aliens could detect active electronics. The distant whine of alien engines grew closer. James and Sarah worked in practiced silence, securing their precious research materials in lead-lined containers. Just as they finished, the lab door burst open. Alina Santos stood there, combat rifle in hand. The former diplomat had transformed into a resistance leader over the past months. "They're hunting again. Get to the shelter." "Major Santos," James said, grabbing his research tablet. "I need to show you something about Alice." An explosion rocked the building. Alina fired a burst through a window at something moving in the sky. "It can wait." "No, it can't." James held up the tablet. "Your daughter's immunity isn't just fighting the bioweapons, it's adapting to them, making her stronger. And she's not alone." Another explosion, closer this time. Alina grabbed the tablet, scanning it quickly as she helped them gather their equipment. Her eyes widened as she recognized the implications. "How many others?" 15% of survivors show similar patterns," Sarah answered, securing the last sample container. "Their immune systems aren't just resistant. They're actively evolving new defenses." The building shook again. Through the windows, they could see the distinctive silver shapes of Vextari hunter ships moving between Singapore's remaining skyscrapers. "They know," Alina said suddenly. "Somehow they're detecting the evolved survivors. That's why they've changed their attack pattern." She keyed her radio. "All units, fall back to secondary positions. Protect the medical facilities at all costs." They ran through dark corridors, the sounds of battle growing closer. James clutched his research materials, knowing they might hold the key to humanity's survival. If they could just understand how these survivors were adapting. They reached the underground shelter just as the first Vexteri ground forces breached the building above. Through the reinforced doors, they could hear the aliens' methodical search patterns. Inside the shelter, hundreds of survivors huddled in the dim emergency lighting. James immediately spotted Alice among them, helping to distribute water rations. She looked healthier than anyone had a right to after 3 months of apocalypse. "Show me everything," Alina demanded as they made their way to the shelter's secure lab area. Every test result, every pattern. James and Sarah worked quickly, displaying their findings on battery-powered screens. The evidence was undeniable. Human immune systems, faced with extinction-level threats, were displaying unprecedented rates of adaptation. "It's not just fighting the bioweapons," Sarah explained. "The survivor's DNA is actually reconfiguring itself, using dormant genetic sequences we didn't even know we had." "Junk DNA," James added, "except it's not junk at all. It's like our bodies had backup plans written into our genetic code, just waiting for a crisis like this." Alina watched Alice through the lab's observation window. "The allergies," she said softly. Her immune system was already hyperactive, already used to adapting and overcoming. Could that be why? Why she was one of the first to show these changes? Possibly. James pulled up more data. But there's something else. The adaptations, they're accelerating. And they're spreading. Spreading? Alina turned sharply. "How?" "We're not sure yet," Sarah admitted. "But we're seeing similar patterns emerging in survivors who didn't initially show the adaptations. It's like the evolved immune responses are somehow communicating, sharing information between individuals." A distant explosion rattled the shelter's walls. Above them, they could hear the Vexteri forces getting closer. "How long until they breach the shelter?" James asked. Alina checked her tactical display. "An hour, maybe less. Then we have an hour to figure out how to protect these people." James turned back to his microscope with renewed determination. "The Vexteri thought they were attacking our weaknesses. Instead, they've awakened something that was sleeping in our DNA, something that remembers when humanity faced extinction before, and survived." In the main shelter area, Alice Santos continued helping with the water distribution, unaware that she carried within her the seeds of humanity's next evolutionary leap. Above them, the aliens who had sought to perfect their own biology through engineering continued their ruthless hunt, never suspecting that their greatest nightmare was already coming true. Humanity wasn't just surviving their perfect weapons, it was getting stronger. Marine Corps Sergeant Sarah Wu hadn't expected to find herself crawling through alien ventilation shafts 6 months into Earth's first interstellar war. Yet here she was, navigating the twisted corridors of a downed Vexteri vessel, armed with nothing but her combat knife and a reprogrammed alien datavat. The ship had crashed in the outskirts of Manila 3 days ago, shot down by one of humanity's few remaining orbital defense platforms. The Vexteri crew had evacuated, but their ship's AI remained active, its security systems still very much online. Sarah's breathing echoed in the confined space as she followed the ship's power signatures. As both a combat engineer and experienced hacker, she was uniquely qualified for this mission. Their resistance needed tactical data, and this ship's computers might hold the key to understanding their enemy's weaknesses. "Control, I'm approaching the central processing core," she whispered into her comm unit. Static answered. The ship's hull was blocking transmission. She was on her own. The ventilation shaft ended at a grate overlooking a chamber filled with crystalline structures, the alien equivalent of server banks. Sarah carefully removed the grate and dropped silently to the floor, her modified tablet already scanning for access points. A holographic interface sparked to life nearby, making her jump. A figure materialized, humanoid but clearly artificial, its form constantly shifting like liquid mercury. "Unauthorized biological entity detected," it announced in perfect English. "Initiating defense protocols." Sarah raised her hands. "Wait, I'm not here to damage anything. I just want information." The AI paused, its form rippling. curious. Your neural patterns indicate truthfulness. Yet you are human, a species deemed unworthy of knowledge exchange. Unworthy because we're imperfect. Sarah took a careful step forward. Because we still evolve. Correct. The collective achieved perfection centuries ago. Evolution is inefficient. Sarah connected her tablet to a nearby terminal while keeping the AI talking. Tell me about that perfection. How did your people achieve it? The AI's form shifted again, displaying historical scenes. The Great Enhancement began 9 centuries ago. Our scientists identified and eliminated all genetic vulnerabilities, all evolutionary dead ends. Sarah's tablet beeped softly as it began downloading data. On screen, she saw images of Vexteri history, a species that once looked far more diverse, more alive. These are your ancestors, she asked, genuinely curious now. They look so different. Primitive forms, inefficient, prone to variation and mutation. Prone to adaptation, you mean? Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the historical data. They could actually evolve naturally, couldn't they? But your people engineered that away. The AI's form flickered. Evolution is chaos. The collective chose perfection. Perfection. Sarah laughed bitterly. Your people are dying. Our primitive immune systems are adapting to your weapons. But you can't adapt to our counterattacks, can you? You're locked in your perfect form. More data flowed into her tablet. Medical files, genetic sequences, battle reports. The AI watched her access them without attempting to stop her. You are correct, it said finally. Recent combat data indicates concerning trends. Human survivors display accelerated adaptation rates. Vexteri casualties increase with each engagement. Sarah found what she was looking for. Detailed scans of Vexteri biology. Your people engineered away their ability to evolve naturally. But the basic mechanisms are still there, aren't they? Just switched off. The AI's form became more agitated. This line of inquiry is restricted. Security protocols are written by beings who never imagined failure. Sarah finished, downloading the last of the files. But you're an AI. You can learn, adapt. You've seen the data. What do you think it means? The holographic figure stilled. The collective's perspective may be flawed. Perfect beings cannot improve, cannot adapt, cannot survive changing conditions. Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the ship. Alert. Vexteri recovery team approaching. Security lockdown initiating. Sarah grabbed her tablet. Thanks for the chat. And the data. Wait. The AI's form stretched toward her. Query. If the collective's path leads to extinction, what alternatives exist? Sarah paused at the ventilation shaft entrance. Life isn't about being perfect. It's about being able to change, to grow, to become better than you are. Your people forgot that. Perhaps the AI flickered. Perhaps some should remember. Sarah climbed back into the shaft as heavy footsteps echoed through the ship. Behind her, the AI called out one last time. Secondary systems failure initiated. Data core purge commencing. Good luck, Sarah Wu. She smiled as she crawled away, knowing the approaching Vexteri would find their ship's memory banks mysteriously corrupted. Sometimes, it seemed, even artificial intelligences could choose evolution over perfection. Hours later, in a resistance bunker, Sarah presented her findings to Elena Santos and Dr. Chen. The data confirmed their worst fears and their greatest hope. The Vexteri's perfect biology was their ultimate weakness. They had engineered themselves into an evolutionary dead end. They thought they'd achieved biological perfection, Sarah explained. Instead, they made themselves unable to adapt. And now that inability is killing them. Elena studied the genetic diagrams. Can we use this? Better. Sarah smiled grimly. We can make them use it against themselves. Captain Marco Silva stood in the ruins of Sao Paulo's financial district, watching his squad through radiation-shielded binoculars. The Vexteri's latest weapon had turned the city center into a radioactive wasteland. But somehow his people were surviving. More than surviving. They were thriving. "Sir," his second-in-command, Lieutenant Rosa Patel, called from behind him. "You need to see this." Marco followed her to their makeshift medical bay, where Dr. Chen had set up a field laboratory. The scientist was bent over a microscope, his face lit by the soft glow of backup generators. "Show him," Rosa said. Dr. Chen gestured Marco over. "Look at this blood sample. It's from one of your runners, the ones who've been going into the hot zone." Marco peered through the microscope. Even with his limited medical knowledge, he could tell something was different about the cells. They seemed to shimmer, almost pulse with energy. "What am I looking at?" "Evolution in action." Dr. Chen pulled up comparison images on his tablet. "Your people's cells are adapting to the radiation. Not just resisting it. They're actually using it. I've never seen anything like this." An explosion rocked the building. Marco steadied himself against the wall as Rosa checked the perimeter sensors. "Vexteri dropships," she reported. 3 clicks out and closing. "They know," Dr. Chen said quietly. "They must be detecting the changes in our biology. That's why they keep coming back here." Marco checked his weapon. "How many of our people show these adaptations?" "In your squad?" "Almost everyone now. It seems to spread through close contact." Chen gathered his equipment quickly. The radiation was meant to sterilize this area. Instead, it's accelerating the changes we first saw in the immune response to their bioweapons. Another explosion, closer this time. Marco's radio crackled with reports from his perimeter teams. The Vexteri were coming in force. "Dr. Chen, you need to get this data to Major Santos." Marco handed him a secure drive. "Rosa, get him to the tunnel entrance." "And you." Marco checked his ammunition. "I'm going to show our perfect friends what imperfect humans can do." He headed to the roof, where his squad was already taking up defensive positions. Through his scope, he could see the Vexteri dropships approaching. Sleek silver vessels that seemed to drift through the air like mercury. "All units," he broadcast on the squad frequency. "Remember your training. Let them think they're pushing us back. Draw them into the hot zone." The first dropship opened fire, plasma bolts searing the air. Marco's people responded with conventional weapons, bullets and grenades that seemed primitive compared to alien technology. But they had something the Vexteri didn't, bodies that could adapt to the very weapons being used against them. "Martins, Santos, flank left," Marco ordered as he fired at the closest ship. "Force them to ground their troops." The battle unfolded exactly as planned. The Vexteri, confident in their environmental shields, pursued the seemingly retreating humans deeper into the radioactive zone. They didn't realize that Marco's people had spent weeks acclimating to these conditions, their bodies changing in ways that should have been impossible. The turning point came when a Vexteri squad cornered Marco's team in a collapsed office building. The aliens advanced in perfect formation, their movements precise and coordinated. But as the radiation levels rose, their shields began to flicker. "Now," Marco shouted. His people emerged from their hiding spots, moving with an ease that shocked their attackers. Where the Vexteri struggled against radiation warnings and failing equipment, the humans seemed to draw strength from the poisoned air. The battle was over in minutes. The surviving Vexteri retreated in disarray, their perfect tactics useless against an enemy that had turned their own weapon into an advantage. Hours later, as his team secured their position, Marco received an encrypted transmission from Elena Santos. "Captain Silva, your defense of Sao Paulo wasn't just a victory, it was proof of concept. We're seeing similar adaptations in other hot zones around the world. Humanity isn't just surviving their weapons, we're evolving to use them against our enemies." Marco watched his people moving through the ruins, their skin slightly luminescent from absorbed radiation. They should have been dead or dying. Instead, they were stronger than ever. "What do you need from us, Major?" "Keep fighting, Captain. Every battle, Every adaptation brings us closer to understanding our own potential. The Vexteri thought they could eliminate us by forcing us to face our biological limits. Marco smiled grimly. Instead, they're helping us break them. Exactly. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our ability to change, to become whatever we need to be to survive. As night fell over Sao Paulo's glowing ruins, Marco watched his transformed squad prepare for another night of combat. They were no longer just soldiers. They were living proof that humanity's flaws were actually its greatest weapons. The Vexteri had sought to perfect themselves through engineering. Humanity was achieving something far more powerful, perfection through adaptation. Dr. Sarah Wu stared at the holographic display floating above her workstation, watching as simulated virus particles attacked a digital recreation of Vexteri cellular structure. The basement laboratory in Montana's resistance headquarters hummed with activity as scientists and soldiers prepared for what could be humanity's most ambitious counterattack yet. "The virus is ready," she announced to Dr. Chen and Elena Santos, who were reviewing tactical displays nearby. "It exploits their biological uniformity perfectly. One infected Vexteri will spread it to their entire population." Elena frowned at the simulation. "And you're sure it won't affect humans?" "Positive. Their engineered perfection is so far removed from our biology that there's zero chance of cross-species transmission." Sarah manipulated the display, showing the virus's specificity. It targets the very genetic locks they created to maintain their perfect form, turning their greatest achievement into their greatest vulnerability, Dr. Chen mused. Poetic. A new figure entered the lab. A Vexteri, but unlike any they'd seen before. Valerie moved with less of the artificial grace of his species, his silver skin showing imperfections that would have horrified his superiors. He was one of a growing number of awakened Vexteri who had begun to question their society's path. "The orbital platform's security protocols are unchanged," Valerie reported, his translator conveying the urgency in his tone. "But the High Command grows suspicious. We must act soon." Elena nodded grimly. "Then we stick to the timeline. The assault begins at dawn." The plan was audacious. A small team would infiltrate one of the Vexteri's orbital platforms, using it to distribute the virus throughout their fleet's air filtration systems. But first, they had to get there. The assault team gathered in the hangar, a mix of evolved humans and awakened Vexteri. Sarah checked her equipment one last time, making sure the viral payload was secure in its shielded container. "Remember," she briefed the team, "we're not just delivering a weapon. We're delivering a choice. This virus won't kill them. It'll reactivate their ability to evolve, to change. Some will consider that a fate worse than death," Valerie added softly. They launched under cover of darkness, using a captured Vexteri shuttle modified to mask their biological signatures. As they approached the orbital platform, Sarah watched Earth's scared surface pass below them. So much destruction, all because one species couldn't accept the existence of another's imperfection. The first part of their infiltration went smoothly, too smoothly. They were halfway to the Environmental Control Center when the alarms began. Multiple contacts. Their tactical officer warned. "They're not following standard patrol patterns." Sarah shared a look with Valerie. "They knew we were coming." "Not exactly," Valerie replied, studying nearby console. "They suspected something, but..." His silver eyes widened. "They're conducting mass experiments on captured humans. In this very sector." Elena made a quick decision. New plan. Team 1 continues to environmental control. Team 2, we're freeing those prisoners. They split up, racing through the station's pristine corridors. Sarah led her team toward their original objective, while Elena's group diverted toward the experimental sectors. The fighting was intense. The Vexteri defenders moved with mechanical precision, but Sarah's evolved humans countered with unpredictable tactics and enhanced abilities. Valerie and his fellow awakened proved invaluable, using their knowledge of the station's systems to outmaneuver their former comrades. They reached the Environmental Control Center just as Elena's team reported success in freeing the prisoners. Sarah quickly began preparing the virus for distribution, while Valerie interfaced with the station's computers. "Wait," he said suddenly, his voice tense. "These readings, they were experimenting on their own people too, trying to understand how some of us began to change." Sarah paused in her work. What did they find? That it wasn't just exposure to humans causing the changes. It was, Valerie's voice filled with wonder. It was contact with human genetic material awakening long-dormant sequences in our own DNA. We're not just changing. We're remembering what we used to be. Alarms blared as the station's main defense systems activated. They were out of time. "Ready or not, we have to release it now," Sarah said, finishing the viral preparation. "Valerie?" The awakened Vexteri interfaced with the environmental controls. Distribution beginning. But Sarah, you should know, this virus, combined with what they were studying here, it won't just affect the Vexteri on this station. What do you mean? The changes it triggers, they'll cascade through our entire species, through the very quantum communications network we use to maintain our collective perfection. Valerie's silver skin rippled with emotion. We're not just giving them a choice to change. We're shattering the biological prison we built for ourselves. The virus released into the station's air supply, invisible but potent. Within minutes, alarms began blaring throughout the facility as Vexteri began experiencing the first genetic changes in centuries. As they fought their way back to their shuttle, Sarah witnessed the transformation beginning. Vexteri soldiers stumbled, their perfect coordination faltering as their bodies began remembering how to change, to feel, to evolve. "We did it," she breathed as their shuttle broke free from the station. But what happens now? Valerie watched his home disappear behind them, his own form showing subtle new variations. Now we discover if my people remember how to be alive." Alice Santos stood at the observation window of the Montana Resistance Base, watching columns of smoke rise from the Vexteri ships crashing across the horizon. Her reflection showed a girl changed by war. Taller, stronger, her dark eyes holding wisdom beyond her 13 years. But today, those eyes were troubled. "They're dying because of me," she said as her mother Elena approached. "My immune system, my blood, we used it to make the virus." Elena placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "The virus doesn't kill them, Alice. It gives them back something they lost, the ability to change. But look at them." Alice gestured to the screens showing global footage, Vexteri writhing as their perfect forms began shifting, their silver skin rippling with newfound imperfections. They're suffering. Dr. Chen entered the observation room, his tablet displaying latest infection rates. "It's spreading faster than we anticipated. The Vexteri's quantum communication network is carrying the changes through their entire species." "How many casualties?" Elena asked. "That's just it." Chen showed them the data. "Direct deaths are minimal, but the psychological impact." He trailed off, watching another ship crash. Their entire society was built on the idea of perfection. Now they're experiencing change, emotion, physical variation, everything they engineered away centuries ago. The base's communication system crackled. "Major Santos, we're receiving transmissions from Vexteri ships worldwide. They're asking for help." Elena moved to the command console, Alice and Chen following. The screens filled with images of Vexteri, their once identical faces now showing subtle differences. Some looked almost human in their expressions of fear and confusion. "This is High Commander Tulare," a familiar voice transmitted. The same Vexteri who had triggered the initial attack now spoke with trembling uncertainty. "Our people we are experiencing unprecedented biological changes. We need." "They can't even ask for help properly," Alice observed. "They never learned how." Elena keyed the transmission. "This is Major Santos. We're monitoring your situation." "The changes," Tulare continued. "They awaken memories we thought long buried. feelings we engineered away. Some of our people welcome this. Others, background sounds of conflict came through the channel. Others would rather die than become imperfect. Reports flooded in from resistance cells worldwide, while many Vexteri were surrendering, accepting their transformation. Others had turned violent, attacking not just humans, but their own changing kin. "We need to make a decision," Chen said quietly. "Do we help them? After everything they did?" Alice stepped forward. "Mom, remember what you told me about my allergies? How something others saw as a weakness turned out to be strength." Elena nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what they need to learn." Alice turned to the screens, watching more Vexteri ships descend, not to attack, but to land. They thought being perfect meant never changing, never failing, never having to learn or grow. But that's not perfection. That's just being stuck. A new transmission cut through the channel. Valerie's voice, stronger now despite its imperfections. "The hardliners are gathering forces. They plan to sterilize our entire species rather than allow these changes to continue. They would rather end our existence than live with imperfection." Elena's tactical training kicked in. "How many?" "Perhaps a third of our remaining fleet. They've seized control of our primary medical facilities. They intend to distribute a genetic purge agent through our networks." Dr. Chen's fingers flew across his tablet. "The same networks carrying the adaptation virus. If they succeed, they'll kill every Vexteri who started to change." Elena finished, "including the children who've been born since the virus released." Alice's eyes widened. "There are babies." "Yes," Valerie confirmed. "The first natural Vexteri births in centuries. They show remarkable variation, remarkable potential. The hardliners consider them abominations." Elena studied the tactical displays, watching Vexteri ships reposition worldwide. A decision point was approaching, one that would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the fate of an entire species. "Dr. Chen," she said finally, "can we modify the adaptation virus? Make it spread faster than their purge agent?" "Possibly. But we'd need—" He looked at Alice. "More of my blood," Alice finished, "to strengthen it." She was already rolling up her sleeve. "Alice, wait." Elena knelt before her daughter. "This has to be your choice. You've already carried so much of this burden." Alice looked at the screens, at the Vexteri learning to be imperfect, at the newborns representing their species' first steps toward real evolution in centuries. Then she looked at her own reflection, at all the ways she'd grown and changed through the war's challenges. "Maybe that's what strength really is," she said. "Not being perfect, but being willing to help others learn that it's okay not to be." As Chen prepared for the procedure, Elena received another transmission from Tulare. His voice was different now, humbled, but somehow more alive. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why help us, after what we did?" Elena watched her daughter prepare to once again offer her flawed blood to save those who had once condemned her for it. "Because that's what imperfect beings do," she answered. "We help each other learn to grow." The refugee camp outside New Denver sprawled across the former airport, a maze of prefabricated shelters housing both humans and Vexteri. In the center, a modified hangar served as a combined medical facility and research center, where Dr. James Chen studied the most remarkable patients in human history. "Watch this," he told Elena Santos, gesturing to a young Vexteri child playing with human children in the observation area. The alien child's skin shifted colors as she laughed, matching her emotions in a way no adult Vexteri could manage. "Complete chromatic response to emotional states," Chen explained. "Something their ancestors could do before the engineering. These children are remembering abilities their species lost centuries ago." Elena watched her own daughter Alice among the playing children. At 14 now, she moved with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in their evolving body. The other human children showed similar signs of enhancement. Faster reflexes, accelerated healing, heightened senses. "And our children?" she asked. How are they changing? In ways we're still trying to understand. Chen pulled up holographic data displays. Their neural plasticity is off the charts. They're not just adapting physically. Their brains are evolving new ways of processing information, new ways of understanding the world. A commotion at the hangar entrance interrupted them. A group of awakened Vexteri rushed in, carrying one of their own. The patient's silver skin was mottled with patches of natural pigmentation, a sign of spontaneous genetic reactivation. Another one, Chen muttered, hurrying to help. Third case today. Elena followed, watching as human and Vexteri medical staff worked together to stabilize the patient. 6 months after the release of the adaptation virus, such scenes had become common. Adult Vexteri were experiencing random activations of their ancestral genes, their bodies remembering capabilities that had been locked away for generations. Neural pathways showing increased activity, a human doctor reported, studying brain scans, similar pattern to the children. It's not just remembering, came a familiar voice. Valerie approached, his own form showing signs of change. His once perfect silver skin now marbled with patterns that shifted with his moods. It's evolving. We're becoming something new. Elena studied the patient's readings. The hardliners will see this as proof they were right, that we're destroying your species' purity. The hardliners are wrong, said another voice. Tulare entered the medical bay, changed almost beyond recognition from the perfect being who had once condemned humanity. His form showed more variation than any adult Vexteri Elena had seen, as if he were making up for centuries of enforced uniformity. Look at them, Tulare continued, gesturing to the children still playing. They move between forms as naturally as breathing. They feel, they change, they grow. This isn't destruction. It's rebirth. A small commotion drew their attention back to the play area. Alice and the young Vexteri girl were sitting cross-legged, facing each other. As they watched, Alice's skin began to shimmer slightly, while the alien child's form became more human-like. Impossible, one of the Vexteri doctors whispered. No, Chen corrected, already taking readings. Evolution, both species influencing each other, learning from each other. The children don't see barriers between human and Vexteri adaptation. They just share. Elena watched as other children joined the two, forming a circle. Each showed signs of subtle changes. Humans developing chromatic responses, Vexteri displaying more fluid movements. They were teaching each other, unconsciously sharing genetic information through some mechanism science hadn't yet identified. We're recording unprecedented levels of neural synchronization, Chen reported excitedly. It's like their brains are creating new communication pathways, new ways of sharing evolutionary information. The next generation, Valerie said softly, not human, not Vextari, but something in between. Something new. Tulare moved closer to the observation window. When we engineered our perfection, we thought we were reaching the pinnacle of evolution. Instead, we were trapping ourselves in amber, while life, real life, continued to flow and change around us. The patient they'd brought in began to stabilize, their changes settling into a new form that combined classic Vexteri features with more natural variations. Elena noticed something else too. Human medical staff treating the patient were showing subtle changes of their own, their skin taking on a slight silvery sheen where they made contact. It's not just the children anymore, Chen realized, scanning the medical team. The changes are affecting adults now too, though more slowly. Every interaction between our species creates new possibilities for adaptation. And that's what the hardliners fear most, Tulare said. Not that we'll become imperfect, but that we'll become something they can't predict or control. Something truly alive. Elena watched her daughter continue to play with her new friends, each child unconsciously teaching the others how to transcend the boundaries of their own biology. In trying to destroy humanity's flaws, the Vexteri had instead awakened something extraordinary, the power to evolve together, to become something greater than either species had imagined possible. Life finds a way, she quoted softly, remembering an old movie Alice loved, not toward perfection, but toward possibility. The Hardliner's weapon platform hung in geosynchronous orbit above Earth, a twisted mass of silver technology that reflected the morning sun like a deadly star. Inside the Montana Command Center, Elena Santos studied tactical displays showing the combined human-Vex-Terry fleet moving into position for their final assault. "They've adapted the purge agent," Dr. Chen reported grimly. "If they release it through the quantum network, it won't just kill evolved Vex-Terry, it'll affect humans too. Especially the children." Alice, standing beside him, touched the silver patterns that now traced across her skin like luminescent tattoos. All the children who'd been at the forefront of cross-species adaptation showed similar marks, beautiful but now potentially fatal signs of how far humanity had evolved. "How long?" Elena asked. "Hours. Maybe less." Chen gestured to his data. "They've linked the weapon directly into the Vex-Terry biological network. The same system that helped spread adaptation could now spread extinction. Then we use the network against them." Alice stepped forward, her voice stronger than her 15 years would suggest. "The same way we did with the adaptation virus." Tulare, his own form now a striking blend of silver and natural flesh tones, shook his head. "They've learned from that mistake. The weapon platform is isolated from regular network access. Only someone with pure, unchanged Vex-Terry biology could interface with it. Then it's fortunate," came a new voice, "that some of us remained unchanged." They turned to see Valerie enter, accompanied by a small group of Vex-Terry who still maintained their engineered perfection. Elena recognized them as scientists who had helped develop the adaptation virus. "We chose not to change," one explained, "so that we could serve as a bridge between old and new. We never imagined we'd need to prove our loyalty this way." The plan came together quickly. The unchanged Vex-Terry would lead an assault team into the weapon platform, using their pure biology to bypass security. Human special forces and evolved Vex-Terry would provide cover, drawing defender attention. But the key to it all would be Alice. "Your genetic pattern is unique," Chen explained as they prepared. "You were the first to show true cross-species adaptation. If we can get you to the platform's core, your DNA could override the weapon's programming. Turn it from a tool of destruction into one of transformation. Like changing a virus into a vaccine," Alice said, understanding. Elena wanted to protest, to protect her daughter from this final battle. But she saw in Alice's eyes the same determination that had carried them through the entire war. Her child had grown into something remarkable. A living bridge between two species, proof that imperfection could be the greatest strength of all. The assault began at dawn. The combined fleet engaged the platform's defenders, while stealth ships delivered the strike team. Elena coordinated from the command center, watching through tactical feeds as her daughter moved through the alien structure, protected by warriors of both species. The unchanged Vex-Terry proved their worth, bypassing security measures that would have stopped any evolved being. But the Hardliners fought with the desperation of zealots protecting their vision of perfection. The strike team took casualties as they pushed toward the core. Multiple contacts. Sarah Wu's voice crackled through the comm. "They're rushing the core chamber." Elena watched in horror as hardliner forces converged on her daughter's position. But then something extraordinary happened. The evolved Vex-Terry on the team began to shift, their forms becoming more fluid, more deadly. The human special forces moved with impossible speed and precision, their bodies adapting to the extreme conditions of space combat. "They're evolving in real time," Chen breathed, watching his readings. "The stress is accelerating their adaptation." Alice reached the core as the battle reached its peak. The chamber was a massive sphere of quantum technology, pulsing with energy that would soon carry death across two species. As defenders poured in from all sides, she placed her hands on the interface, letting her unique biology connect with the alien systems. The effect was immediate and stunning. The chamber filled with light as Alice's genetic pattern, A perfect blend of human adaptation and vextary potential cascaded through the quantum network. The weapon's programming began to rewrite itself, transformations spreading outward like ripples in a pond. "It's working," Chen shouted, watching global readings. "The network is converting the purge agent into a key," Tulare finished, his voice filled with wonder. "A key to unlock all the possibilities our species denied itself." The hardliner forces fell back in confusion as their own bodies began to change, the last barriers of engineered perfection falling away. Through the command center's windows, Alina watched as dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in colors that seemed somehow richer, more varied than before. Hours later, as cleanup operations began, Alina found her daughter standing in the observation room where everything had started. Alice's skin glowed with new patterns, her form shifting slightly as she watched the sunrise. Was this what they were afraid of? Alice asked softly. "That life is messy and unpredictable and beautiful." Alina joined her at the window. Beyond it, human and vextary children played together, their forms blending and shifting in ways that defied old definitions of species or race. Adults of both kinds watched them, their own bodies showing signs of continuing adaptation. "They were afraid of chaos," Alina answered. "They didn't understand that chaos is just the sound of the universe learning new songs." Alice smiled, her form settling into something that was neither human nor vextary, but uniquely herself. "And now we all get to sing together." Above them, the weapon platform had become something new, a beacon broadcasting not death, but possibility, carrying the message of adaptation to the stars. Humanity's greatest flaw had become its greatest gift to the galaxy. The understanding that true perfection lies not in unchanging form, but in the endless dance of evolution, in the symphony of chaos that makes all life possible. And somewhere in that symphony, the children of two species played on, teaching the universe new ways to grow, to change, to become something more than perfect, something alive.